Hey everyone, welcome to the Smiling Homeschooler Podcast. We are glad you can join us. Before we begin, we do want to say thank you to Teaching Textbooks for making this all possible. They're an amazing partner, and unfortunately, school is not incredibly far away for many people. So if you are scrambling, trying to figure out what you're doing for everything, go check out Teaching Textbooks. They make math simple and fun and engaging, and you can check them out at teachingtextbooks.com. We also want to thank Samaritan Ministries and Redeem Health Share, where their members are committed to honoring Christ and serving one another through healthcare needs. As my dad Todd likes to say, we use, love, and recommend Samaritan Ministries, and you can learn more about Redeem Health Share by Samaritan Ministries over at samaritanministries.org/familyman, and we really appreciate their support as well. But Dad, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, well, hey, everybody. I don't know about where you live, but it's been beautiful weather where we live. It was a super sunny day today. We played outside. Floated around in the lake for a little while, and we even had a campfire tonight because we were watching some kids and they wanted to have a s'more campfire. We live real close to a Dollar General, and so we all drove to Dollar General, and I told my wife she's not allowed to go in there anymore because she is like a pushover. I mean, her kid, the grandkids are like, can we have a sucker? And she's like, well, I guess so. And then, but she doesn't stop there. It's like, can we have a toy? And like, we went in for, I think, a half a gallon or a quart of ice cream, and we came out with $20 worth of junk the last time we went. And so I'm like,
his dad's lottery tickets.
She cannot go in anymore.
That's right.
So it was a good night. And again, summer is not over. I am fighting for the last month of August because, here in the Wilson household, we were just talking to Jed, our last son to be homeschooled. He's got one more year, and he and his mother were kind of talking about, like, when are we going to start? And yeah, I had been insisting that we would not start till after Labor Day. And Debbie's like, well, I get to decide when we're going to homeschool, when we're going to start and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And then today she goes, well, when do you want to start, Jed? And I'm like, I thought you said you were going to decide. And so,
That's right.
But the stress is really not as great as it used to be. And so if you're just kind of in the throes of things, it will get easier.
Well, it's funny. This may be the first year. I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at different things, but I've seen online like multiple articles talking about like people just being frustrated that school starts so early now. I mean, in our area, it starts this weekend. I mean, I think Friday is like the first day. So I mean, that's August. What is that? 5th, 6th, 7th. I mean, it's just that's so mind blowing there. Or 6th, 7th. Yeah. So. I think it's not just you, I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there who are kind of like, you know what, we've lost something here, starting so stinking early.
We have. In fact, I was over at Facebook today, and they were talking about, there was a mom who was talking about how she homeschools year round, and that's nothing new. And lots of moms say, well, we live where it's hot, so we homeschool, year round, so we can. And they always say this, so we can enjoy the cool winter months. And I hope that is true, because another mom said, we homeschool, then we take 1 week off, and then we jump back in the next week. This is just me. And this is not God. This is Todd. I'm just not sure a week off is enough. Even if you do it every 6 weeks, having 1 week off, I just don't know. Ben, do you have any, what's your gut? We're not going to hold you to it. But do you think as a kid, or even as a mom, 1 week is enough to recharge your batteries? I just don't know.
I mean, I personally don't think so. I mean, I think it takes true time to like really just be able to change your mindset to we don't have something that we need to do. I really think it takes a lot of moms are probably thinking, well, we don't want to break the patterns. We want to keep the habits. We want to keep all those, consistencies. And I get that.
Hogwash.
Yeah, I get that. But at the same time, like, I think it's just a really special thing to be able to just have fun and not have to do those other things. And I think also, like, I just don't think there's anything and we're going to talk about this more, but if you're needing, 48 weeks a year to teach everything you need to teach, it's just too much. There's not enough stuff that you truly are going to have them retain and have to get across for 18 years of nonstop, that, or not 18, 12 years or whatever it is, that you can't take more breaks than that. I do not believe that it's that effective.
Well, even your mom,
I'm not saying they are actually saying that, but
we can't even go to like stay at a camp or a hotel for a couple nights until it takes her like 4 nights before she gets used to the pillow,
totally.
So
yeah. I feel that for vacation every year. It takes me like a couple days before I feel like I fully like am relaxed,
Right.
And I think that's true for anything else. And especially if I'm starting back in 3 days or whatever, then it's like, it's hard to not just be thinking about it.
Right.
The nice part, hopefully, about summer is you don't have to think about it nonstop. So that's the goal, at least.
Well, before we kind of jump into our real topic, I saw over on Facebook, which I thought was kind of interesting. Someone had written, they were talking about, a mom was just saying, about getting caught up in co-ops and tutors and activities, all the stuff you can in a homeschool. She says, some of those moms are missing out on the best part of homeschooling, the relationships with the Lord and family, quiet days at home, learning contentment, and hard work. And one mom wrote, I always feel the sense of guilt. Every time someone asks me what homeschool groups we're in, we're not in any. I just felt like it was taking up time and just was unnecessary. Mm-hmm. As we get ready to start my oldest son's senior year, I'm really glad I never forced him into these types of activities. Another mom said, same. I always end up making some lame, self-deprecating excuse when asked. I'm about to start my 20th year of homeschooling, so you'd think I'd be okay with how we do things. And I just think it's so interesting that these moms, again, feel this guilt over not being part of a homeschool group or going to homeschool things. And I would agree with the first mom who said, my best part of homeschooling really is I like the quiet days at home. I like having my kids home. I've loved having them home, learning together, playing together. And I am fiercely, not opposed, but I resist things that take us out of our home. And I'm all for homeschool co-ops. We've had some great homeschool co-ops over the years. We've had some that weren't so great, but we've had some great ones that I loved once a week, but here's the deal. If you don't want to do a homeschool co-op, don't do them. If that's not your thing, because I am not, my wife and I were just talking about this today. I was talking to my brothers over the weekend because they were all here last week on vacation. And I was talking to one of them. He said that he was the friend guy, after high school, after a game, he would go out with the guys and they would go to Pizza Hut, after the game. I never did that, ever. I can't even think of one time doing that. I didn't have friends over to my house. Maybe less than 5 times. The true psyche of
why Dad still has no friends.
And I told Debbie today, I said, I just like home, because there's something nice about it. And I know I'm not saying everybody has to feel the same way, but if you feel that way, like you don't want to be involved in that stuff, don't be involved in that stuff.
I do think it is just amazing is that just the human condition of, our, of just doubt is just, a mom can homeschool for 20 years and someone who's, been doing for 2 years and says, well, you're not part of a homeschool co-op, can just, you still feel that like, oh no, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. I've been a parent for, almost 10 years now. And like my siblings who are, 17 or whatever, who give me some comment, still throws me off. And it's like, they don't have a clue, but why do I have to, but you still feel that just like doubt, even if you, what you're doing is the right thing and it's working and all that kind of stuff. So it is just it is a hard thing, but which I think actually kind of does help lead off kind of our main topic this week, which you kind of inspired by a conversation you had recently, just about that whole thing of, am I doing enough, or am I, go ahead.
No, I was trying to like get this smooth transition into, now would be a good time to say, we want to thank Samaritan Ministries and Redeem Health Share for for making today's show possible. Everyone knows that sharing works, whether it's helping a neighbor move, clean up after a storm, shoveling the sidewalk after a big snow, or sharing healthcare burdens. For over 30 years, Samaritan Ministries has been a ministry of Christians helping Christians with healthcare needs. So whether you need a hand or can lend a hand, being a member of Samaritan or the recently launched Redeem Health Share Ministry makes healthcare sharing possible. Take it from me. It works for my family. We've used it for over 15 years. Learn more at SamaritanMinistries.org/FamilyMan.
And again, we do want to thank Teaching Textbooks. They're just an amazing partner. And, this year we don't even have to think about what we're going to do for math, not because they're a sponsor, but because we believe Teaching Textbooks is one of the best math curriculums out there. Our families loved it. I loved it. My siblings have loved it. We've recommended it to thousands and thousands of other homeschoolers. And they're just an amazing curriculum, an amazing company. So if you haven't checked them out, or if you're not happy with your math curriculum that you were using last year, go over to teachingtextbooks.com and sign up for a free trial. We really appreciate their support.
Okay, so like Ben was saying, so I was having this conversation with my wife. It was yesterday morning or the morning before, I can't remember. It seems like it's a blur. But we were, it was in the morning, and I don't know about Ben. Ben, I don't know if you usually leave off to work before Brissa is really up and moving.
Right.
But my favorite time of the day is when Mom and I wake up kind of at the same time, and we just talk. Usually our conversations are pretty much the same. Debbie tells me how she feels like she's a failure and everything. And
that does sound like the favorite part of the day.
And I just listen and usually blow it somewhere in the middle. But the part
That's good. Just set the bar low right from the beginning,
That's right. So the part that I was caught by, and actually I don't know if it was when we were laying in bed or maybe we were sitting and talking. I can't remember. But she started talking about something that she was a mom she had talked to, whose daughter was like taking calculus. She might have been taking it, like through a community college or something, still in high school, and immediately she began to say things that kind of insinuated that she failed as a mom because maybe she didn't teach her kids calculus. And I immediately said, well, this kid's a math kid. I think, they want to do something in math, like be a math teacher or something like that. And she said, yeah, but, maybe we should have done that with our kids. And I'm like,
get eliminated by AI.
And I'm just like, and all of a sudden, and I said, yeah, but our kids are super successful. And again, I'm not talking about the money they make. I'm not talking about the careers they're built. I'm like, they're just successful in their family. They love each other. They love God, and they love us. What more do you want? But I could tell she was really troubled by this. And what's more than, because I don't care so much if my wife doubts her own efforts, but then she begins to doubt me, and she's like, well, you always said math, just, blow it off. And I'm like, I never said blow it off. She said, well, you said it doesn't matter. And I said, I never said that either. And, and she said, maybe we were wrong. You were wrong. And that's when I kind of got stern. And I said, I'm not wrong. And so that got me thinking, how many, and we've had this conversation. I feel like, should I live to be 100 and I podcast up until that time, we will be having these same conversations. Because I feel like there are lots of moms listening who are on this hamster wheel of trying to do something that somebody else said they needed.
Yeah.
And Ben and I were just having this conversation. And so I right before, he said, yeah, Dad, but you don't want to just, you don't want to be the one who is always just blowing everything up. Like, just go out and have fun, And really, he said, and Ben can back this up. You basically said we need to acknowledge the struggle, that it is real. What do you mean by that, Ben?
Well, I just mean, feeling doubt or feeling like that, like, am I going to fail, is obviously natural. Everyone except Dad feels that frequently, and I said the crux of it really is you're not going to do nothing as a homeschooler. You are going to do something. So it's deciding and using wisdom what is what actually matters and what really counts. And so that is a judgment call. And so obviously there is that doubt that then arises for many, 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 many people of, am I doing enough? Am I dropping, behind all the stuff we talk about every week? So not saying I think I agree with that is valid fear, but I totally get that it is a constant thing that a lot of people struggle with, and it is going to be a difficult thing to overcome, and I think being brave or being bold, or, as I know, like Homeschool Today magazine, which you write for, really likes to talk about the bold side of things and homeschooling boldly. And I've heard them mention that in multiple issues, is not that you don't ever feel the doubt or feel afraid, lack of that is just like oblivious, but it's that you still push through, even though that's, a fear of yours, and say, I'm not listening to it. I'm going to keep moving forward because I believe that this is not important. For me, coming to, one thing I've really I feel like solidified over the last couple of years is I don't want someone else telling me what I'm supposed to be afraid of personally. So I don't really want, if it's the weather, I don't really want people telling me you should be afraid of the weather. If I look at the weather and it looks, something that I need to be, worried about, then I'll maybe worry about it a little bit, but I'm not going to be just because other people say it. But other things, I struggle more than that, but all that's to say, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I think if you know that you're not doing calculus because you don't think it's relevant for most people, and I have some numbers here I'm going to give in a second. We'll talk. We're just picking on calculus. We'll do a little quiz here with Dad. Then believe that and say, I've made the decision because I think it's not relevant. And unless you see something super, showing that it's not, you're wrong, then stick with it and be okay with that. And, even if you feel a little doubt, say, nope, I made the decision because I'm smart. I have wisdom. I know what's best for my kids, and I don't think this is relevant, so I'm not going to do it, But here's a little quiz. So I looked this up. This is from a little while ago. This was from one of the big news organizations, and they were reporting on this this is within the last couple decades. And I would say in the early 2000s when they did this survey, I would say actually I bet it was higher at that time than it would be now because of the rise of all the services we have. I've literally seen tons of articles this week about how, AI keeps solving all these math problems that no one's ever been able to solve. And, mathematicians are like, basically our whole thing's just dead because why would anyone even do this anymore? But anyways, so what percentage would you say use the term any math in their job? This is blue and white collar. The other crazy thing is blue collar at that time actually used math more than white collar did, which I thought was funny. But what would you guess percentage?
So you're saying any kind of math,
right?
Right?
They answered that they used any kind of math in their work.
I'd say it's pretty high. I'd say 80%.
It's 94% said they used any math, so that's anything.
Right, okay.
So add and subtract.
Because I'm a writer,
yeah,
and I would probably say, I use math.
Yeah.
Because I write numbers sometimes, and I add things up.
Right,
and
exactly. So that's the second one is add and subtract, which is high, so that's 86% of people, so they use add or subtract in their work, multiply and divide. What would you guess?
I'd say that's still 80%.
This is 78% said they use that. So it's still up there.
Off.
Yep. So we'll say fractions.
I can do guess your weight too if you want me to.
Yeah, fractions.
I'm pretty good at that. Fractions, I'd say it's
which is percentages,
25%.
So
I'll say 10%. 10%.
Yeah, this one's actually really high, 66%. Because you're thinking, because you're thinking percentages though more than anything.
Okay,
so I use them all the time at work, just being like, oh, that's roughly 10% of that, but they call it as fractions technically. Okay, so then they have a more advanced math, which I'm not going to get. We're going to get in the first actual algebra, basic is what they said. What would you guess? And this again, all industries 20 years ago, is when this big study was done. Or a little less than 20, more like 15.
5%.
It's actually higher. It's 19%. Okay. So that's the basic algebra, which again, who knows what they're even counting is at. That might just be, we have an unknown. We sell something for this. It costs this. We're solving for the unknown, that kind of stuff, even though it's adding and subtracting, I guess. But geometry, I'm just going to give you this one, 14%. Okay. Calculus is the last one they did, the most advanced one they did. What would you guess? Which you're already going low, so you probably are going to go.
No,
they have it as 5%. But worst case
Wrong.
scenario, and that's again, I think these are all I
They're
would guess
talking
much
to
higher.
calculus teachers.
Yeah, I know, right? But again, you have to include engineering, which
Okay.
does use it. You have to use it like software development. Some of those did use that. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that do, but those are again very specific jobs.
But I was talking to an engineer. They said, we have a mathematician in our
Yeah,
company.
totally.
We don't do math.
Yeah, totally. And now again, they have programs, they have
Right.
AI, they have all sorts of stuff that does the complex, advanced stuff for them. So worst case scenario, you're talking 5% of people will ever use calculus. So why would you spend an entire year of your child's life, if they are not expressing interest in any of those things, on something that only 5% of people will use? They have a 95% chance at least, which I would say it's probably 99% chance of never using it again in their entire life.
I would say using a little bit of math, that means if there were 100 homeschooled kids, only 5 of those kids would grow up to use that. I would say, like we've talked before, so we'll say double that. So maybe 10 of those kids could be learning calculus. The other 90 kids shouldn't be doing calculus. But let's take it to a different subject. Even something as simple as, how about we'll say the parts of speech? That is, Ben, can you name, and if I gave you a sentence, could you give the indirect object? Could you do the direct object? Could you, I know he can't, because I did it. I can't, and I don't, or a participle or whatever. And again, okay, here's the part. Sometimes I wish like Ben kind of believed differently than I did, and that we could like duke it out like a wrestling match right here on the internet, because I would love to talk to somebody, because I don't care what their argument was. I do not think they could convince me that everybody needs to know those things.
Not everyone, but this is one of the first times I've ever run into someone who was breaking something down using more advanced forms of just understanding how writing, grammar, and structure and stuff like that. Again, I understand object and all that, but like, it was actually a theological thing, and they were doing a breakdown of like, something of verses and how, how it would flow. And they were also using Hebrew and Greek and other stuff like that as well. But like understanding that like, well, sentence structure is set up this way so that we know that this means this because of this, and I'm like, I mean, that makes sense. I don't necessarily know I would have ever gotten to that without, some pretty but again, like if I was going to be into that a lot, I could learn that pretty quickly on like understanding the structure of what they're looking at. Obviously, I'm not going to learn Greek and Hebrew all of a sudden, but and I think those are things that you can learn if you are going to actually get into it, something like that. But that is such a tiny group of people who are getting into that complex of understanding like the fundamental language breakdown of of something like that. So
okay, let's take that a step further then. Okay, so we could do this on every subject that we cover. Like Ben did with math. And I could say, does everybody read? And they'd say, oh yeah, 100% of people read at some level. So 100% of our kids should learn how to read. They can't understand the Bible if they can't read. And again, I know there are some kids and adults who cannot read. Whether they're mentally disabled or handicapped or whatever. So when I say 100%, I know there are exceptions. We could do that with everything. Spelling. Does everybody know how to spell? Well, I'm not a good speller. I still can't spell. And I did all that kind of spelling. Oh man, talk about where I forgot where I was going to go.
Well, I mean, you're talking about stuff. I mean, obviously
ahead.
There's, advanced sciences and all sorts of stuff. Now, I do think like, we're not saying don't have kids that are excited or interested in learning stuff, because I do think there's a ton of value in having kids that are curious, that are learning constantly through whatever formats they like, So like, I don't think every bit of knowledge has to be one-to-one practical, like history. I love history. It's not like I'm just like, oh, because I understand a little bit about this battle, like that does not help me in my general life very much. But I do think there is value in giving you context to other things, or like, is this actually true? Like, this thing that's now being said about, let's say the founding fathers, or if you've never read anything about Abraham Lincoln, all of a sudden they're dragging him through the mud or whatever, so like, I think there's value in like having perspective
I think
on
what
stuff.
You said,
but yeah, I
think
enjoy
what
that.
you said is true. What you enjoy.
Totally.
You are not a history person because we made you do history.
Exactly.
You are not a math person because we have a cousin of my wife's. Her son just had if you've ever seen Daily Dose of Internet, I don't know, about a month ago, he was on there because he had digitized a self-playing piano. He invented himself. And he had like 1 million views on his little website, and he's got this big pipe organ thing that sounds like the like a pizza place pipe organ, where they're playing John, and he's doing all these amazing things. He was doing those amazing things not because someone told him to and showed him how to he did those things because somehow God put it in his heart to want to do those kind of things. And his parents gave him the tools to be able to do those things. And I think really, as we look at learning and as we look at your homeschooling year, I think you get to decide, what counts and what doesn't. You get to decide what feels like learning and what feels like fake learning, but I think it's based on a child's interest. I think it's based on a child's even self-directed interest, because all our kids, every single one, was not created to like something because I made them like it or Debbie taught them that. It was something, God put something in their heart that went a direction, and we just fueled the fire. And the whole point of this conversation is to say, if you decide something that you, and again, what your child, people say to me, well, I don't know what my kid's going to be. Yes, you do. I just don't believe that. I would even say now, Ben's kids are starting to show an interest in certain things. I mean, whether that's, Hudson likes order and he likes counting things and he likes arranging things. So that's kind of, Anders likes to be an animal. He was a great horse today, by the way, prancing around the yard. I asked him what his name was, and he's like, is
so
it Bob?
Yeah.
So we came on lightning, and I said, why lightning? And then he took off as fast as he could to show me he was fast. And I just think, I just want this to be the best homeschool year for you. And man, going back to our calculus, if you have a math child in that, 5 out of 100, who shows an interest in math and thinks that's going to be their bent, I'd say, hey, let them do calculus, let them do algebra, let them do those things and enjoy it and have fun, But if you have kids who just barely get by the division part, and and you can just tell this is not their thing, be okay with not doing it, knowing that they're not going to use it, and I know moms will say, yeah, but you have to struggle through these things so they'll learn other things. Again, my thoughts on that is baloney. That is, you can have them learn Elvish or something else, all the names in Middle Earth as an exercise. But I don't think, that we have to go by someone else's list to say that it is learning. And if we do those things, then we've done something. Yeah. And if not, then we didn't accomplish anything. I mean,
obviously you will have times where it's challenging, but I mean, the difference is, that's where, you'll see those people who believe that, a chess master can be taught, not just, it's not just you're born as a chess genius. There's been people who have try to prove that, but it's like, a lot of times, if that's what you're going to be like, then your chances of your child hating you or hating what they're doing is going to be much, much higher, because, just to get someone to be that successful, quote unquote, in the form that, their parent wants them to be, that they're going to master everything in this, all these things. It takes a toll, but also, I mean, even if you're the most skeptical person of like, well, I just think these things all are needed to be a well-rounded person, to be functional. I would think anyone would have to admit to themselves, like, if nothing else, even if someone is a public teacher, I hope they can be real enough to say, the reason our curriculum has all this stuff is we have decided we are doing 12 years of school. That's 180 days. That is this many hours a day. And we have to fill it. So we have to come up with all of these things. Like, I'm not joking.
Exactly
like, it is 100% true. Like, it's not natural. It's just, this is what they've decided. And so they fill it.
And even in lessons, if there's so much filler in your history lessons because they got to go 180 days and they're trying to cover the pilgrims. It's like, well, we're going to have to give them 3 weeks. So we got to talk about it for 3 weeks.
They literally know the goal. The whole time they're working on it, their goal is, I have to fill this many lessons.
I mean, I went to one of those curriculum places and there's people sitting in little cubicles, and they've got X amount of words they have to fill in. And they don't know anything about your kids. They don't know anything about your life. And they're sitting there typing in stuff.
I mean, I always think of it in like, and then this is in a positive way, but like you do the You to Dad daily calendar. Mm-hmm. Like you're doing it but your goal is to fill every day. Like, obviously like you're not just like naturally writing this stuff out as like, oh, I had 106 interesting facts. It's like, no, your goal is to fill every day. So you will find this stuff to fill every day because that's what you do in a calendar, so it's just, it's obvious, but there's still just such a strong pull, It's hard.
So Mom, you can figure it out. I was just writing an article today and I was telling Ben right before, and really the title is just use your brains. And those brains that God gave you, he made you smart enough to figure this out. And I'm asking you to be honest with yourself, talk to your spouse and say, hey, is this necessary? And if you think it is, really think it is, not what someone else says. Go ahead and do it. Does it bring your kid joy? Do it. But if it makes your kids cry and you think it's a waste of time, then don't do it. And I would almost guarantee you'll have a great homeschool year. Hey, before we go, though, before Ben closes us out, remember last week we talked about World Watch News? Again, if you didn't take advantage of that special discount, I think you get like 67 days off free if you'll go to, I don't know if Ben can put the link in there again, but there's a special link that will take you to our special page, and you can use the code TODD, TODD 30, and they'll take off even more days as you subscribe. And again, a great way to start a day. Give your kids some news and 10 minutes of smiles, I guarantee. Okay, Ben, take us out.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate y'all being here as we are coming into the homeschool year pretty soon here. Go take the homeschool personality test if you haven't. It's over on our website, thesmilinghomeschooler.com. It's free. It's a fun thing to do as a group if you have some other homeschool moms that haven't done it before. And it just gives you a good way to communicate, talk about your different styles, and understand how you homeschool a little bit better. Also, thank you to Homeschooling Today. Not Homeschooling Today. Thank you to Teaching Textbooks for making this all possible. We really appreciate them. And their math curriculum is amazing. So go check out a free trial. If you have any questions, you can always give them a call, reach out. They've got great customer service, and you can do that over at teachingtextbooks.com. Also, thank you to Samaritan Ministries and Redeem Health Share, where members are committed to honoring Christ and serving one another through healthcare needs. As Dad likes to say, we use, love, and recommend Samaritan Ministries, and you can learn more about Redeem Health Share at samaritanministries.org/familyman, and we appreciate their support. Everyone have a great week. Don't forget to smile, and we'll see you next week.